Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Another top 15 matchup at Rupp Arena. Feels like every time that Kentucky takes to court, they are playing a top 15 team. In the case of Tuesday night, it was the Texas A&M Aggies, and Kentucky, for the fifth time this year, has beaten a team ranked in the top 15. They've beaten Duke on a neutral. They've beaten Gonzaga on a neutral. They beat Florida at Rupp. They beat Mississippi State on Saturday night. Well, they get Texas A&M at home, and they beat them. Final score 81-69. And when I look at this game, first of all, I want to get to some Buzz Williams comments later on here in just a moment. But before we get there, I want to say this. Can I say that this is Kentucky's best win of the season? I cannot, okay? Because Duke is awesome. Duke's going to be a 1 seed. Gonzaga's great. That game was in Seattle. You win at Mississippi State. Florida, I still think is awesome, even though they lost. I can't say this is the best game, the best win. It might be the most impressive, though, and let me explain why. Because through early in the season, Kentucky has really been able to win one way. And Kentucky fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got to score, and hope. All you got to do is be 1 point better than the opposition. And if you can do that, you get the win. And you look at Kentucky's big wins early in the season. 77-72 at Duke, okay. But then you have the 90-89 win over Gonzaga in overtime, the 93-85 win over Louisville, the 106-100 win over Florida, and the 95-90 win over Mississippi State. Outside of the Duke game, what is the one common denominator? You had to score a bunch of points, you had to shoot really well, or you were not going to win based on defense and based on, let's be honest, toughness, right? That has been a prevailing comment and a prevailing commentary about this Kentucky basketball team. It is this team, quote, tough enough to beat the great teams in the country? Well, one, I think the toughness is relative, but the one thing that has been clear, and we've talked about it, there's been a lot of up and down games from a lot of different players. And then also, could you win games based on defense? Could you win games based solely on that toughness? And I think they kind of did that on Tuesday night. Texas A&M, and they talked about it during the broadcast. I'm sorry, Tuesday was kind of crazy for me, but I think Jimmy Dykes was on the broadcast. If he wasn't, I apologize. Don't yell at me. But I believe it was Jimmy Dykes that said it like 2 or 3 times. Like, listen, Texas A&M is going to drag you in the mud, and they're going to make you play in the mud. And are you going to be able to handle it? And Kentucky handled it. And so what should be refreshing if you're a Kentucky fan is a couple of things. One, you won a game where, again, you were kind of dragged into the mud. Where a game where you scored in the low 80s and a lot of those points came late. It was 35-32 at halftime, okay? You played a game, by the way, where you didn't shoot great from the three-point line. I mean, you look at some of these Kentucky wins. Look at the win over Florida a few weeks ago as an example. In that win over Florida as a team, Kentucky shot 14 of 29 from 3, 48%, okay? Well, you go to Tuesday night against Texas A&M. Texas A&M actually did a pretty good job of limiting the three-point shots. 9 of 27 Kentucky shot, that's 33%. So Kentucky did not shoot great. They found a way to win against a tough physical team. They out-rebounded them in a +10 manner. So again, if you're arguing Kentucky ain't tough enough, well, guess what? They were +10 on the boards against Texas A&M, a team that thrives on the boards. And I think it's very clear to me that Mark Pope kind of emphasized, hey, if we're not going to crash the glass, we're not winning this game. Beyond that, there's something else that I want to talk about, really 2 things. One, Jackson Robinson's turning into a star in front of our eyes. Okay, by the way, as producer Matt just reminded me, make sure you're following our Torres on UK account, Torres on UK, for all your late-breaking Kentucky news, okay? But to keep the conversation going, I think Jackson Robinson is turning into a star in front of our eyes. In this game, remember, he had 27 against Mississippi State the other night. He has 22 in this game, 8 rebounds, and I think most importantly, as I said, while much of the team struggled, Jackson Robinson against his former team, 5 of 13 from 3. Yeah, he was chirping at that Texas A&M bench. Yeah, Buzz Williams wanted a technical foul called. No, he did not get it. So Jackson Robinson man, oh man, he's kind of letting it hang right now, if you know what I mean. And he's turning into the star that Kentucky needs, because I will say, I do believe, and I've said this, I think Lamont Butler has been pretty consistent. Otega Owe has scored a lot, but it's sometimes been up and down. When he's struggled, he's put up points, but 4 of 13 from the field, 3 of 13 from the field, whatever. But at the same time, what I would also add is that you look at Kentucky, they need that go-to guy every night. And it doesn't have to be 27, doesn't even have to be 22. But can Jackson Robinson consistently get them 16 to 17 to 18 a night? If they can, it's a total game changer. Lastly, before we get to some of your questions, saw a great quote after the game from Buzz Williams talking about this Kentucky team. He said, quote, "They're good enough to win the national championship. They play with great spirit. Their coach has a phenomenal spirit. How he leads is the appropriate way in 2025. Listen, I'll leave that last quote, how he leads in 2025. Buzz Williams is a big leadership guy. I don't know how many people know this, but he takes leadership seminars. I've been told when he retires from coaching, he wants to be like a life coach. But so leading to him is a very important element. But I only say that to say, I want to talk for half a second about his comments. Kentucky is good enough to win a national championship. Listen, first of all, I think they are. I mean, listen, just think about it. I mentioned it. 5 wins against top 15 teams. Those are the teams that you're going to have to beat in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8 in a Final Four game. You could beat Duke on a neutral in Atlanta at the Champions Classic. Then you could beat Duke in San Antonio. You could beat Duke in an Elite 8 game wherever the Elite 8 would be played. So if you beat Duke, you beat – and I think the cool thing about watching Kentucky is they're doing it against a lot of different teams. Florida, elite three-point shooting team, elite offensive rebounding team. Texas A&M, much more defensive culture. Now, they're an offensive rebounding team as well, but they don't score a ton. But they dragged you in the mud. Florida dragged you into a high-scoring game, and you were able to respond in all manners. I think beyond that, and this is the important part as well, is that you have to be able to continue to get better on defense. I think Tuesday night was a great, great, great first step if you are a Kentucky fan, because you were, again, able to win a game where their defense did a relatively good job of shutting you down, but your defense stepped up. I think in some of the losses, most specifically Georgia last week, you really didn't do that. And so the fact that you were able to do it, I think it's a totally positive sign. And I think what Buzz Williams said is accurate. I think we're talking about a team that is good enough to win a national championship. Now, will they? Only one team can win it, but can they? Yeah, I'd put them in that class. I'd put them in the class with Auburn. I'd put them in the class with Duke. I'd put them in the class with Iowa State, because again, they're able to win in different ways. They're able to figure out ways to win in different manners. That's kind of the same thing. I think I just said the same thing, but you get the point. Kentucky with the very nice win over Texas A&M.